What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another ProGuides video. I'm Kangas, and today I'm analyzing some solo queue gameplay from Carzzy, the AD carry for Mad Lions, who currently holds the rank 1 position on the EU West solo queue ladder. But before we dive in, I want to mention that learning from VODs like this is a great resource, but it can only help so much. So if you're serious about climbing in solo queue, you should head over to ProGuides.com. We got top tier coaches available around the clock who can actually VOD review your own games or just hop into a normal game and play with you, teaching you all kinds of stuff. We're even offering courses from talented pros like Aframu, Xmithy, and Core JJ, so if you want to learn, go check it out. But now onto today's video, let's start things off with a bit of pre-game analysis. Lucian has been a champ that we've warned against you playing for quite a while. He may be a lane bully that's annoying to deal with, but once he's behind, he's basically out of the game for good. He's had around 44 or 45% win rate in both solo lanes for a long time, and he has been a bottom 3 pick for AD carry for a while as well. But these changes on 11.17 are massive for Lucian AD carry, making him more than a viable pick now. He pairs super well with enchanters and kill lane supports, and he scales better than ever since his ult's bullet count scales with crit. This specific game, he's paired with Yuumi. A key skill for AD carry mains is knowing how to adapt your playstyle to your support, and in this case, he's an AD carry that in general wants to be very aggro in lane. But being with Yuumi means that he can't just dash in and fight the enemy bot lane anytime that he wants. Now, while that may be something that he has to play around early, later it'll actually be a strength. Since Yuumi is permanently attached, he doesn't have to worry about positioning in range of his support in fights. He can just worry about himself dashing wherever he needs to. As for the enemy bot lane, it's a lane that can't really punish the Yuumi pick too well. Senna is a relatively weak early game champ, and when Pyke isn't paired with an AD carry that puts out a lot of damage earlier on, he's not that effective either. So as long as Carzzy holds his dash and plays around the mini wave, he should never really be hit with CC. Next up, let's take a look at the build that Carzzy goes with Lucian. For his runes, he runs Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Bloodline, Cut Down, Biscuit Delivery, and Cosmic Insight, with the stat runes being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. Most Lucians will run Press the Attack due to its synergy with the passive, as this gives you some really strong trading early game and the best 1v1 potential against squishy targets at all stages of the game, since you hit hard and then burst them down in a few autos. But Conqueror is the better scaling option. You'll get more damage over time, especially with your ultimate. And honestly, there's really no right or wrong here, just whichever of the two you prefer. Though as a general rule, it will be a good idea to take Press the Attack with a more aggro support and Conqueror with a scaling one like Yuumi. For his items, he starts off with a Doran's Blade and then builds into a Gale Force. He picks up tier 1 boots along the way and doesn't upgrade them till way later. After Gale Force, he goes for Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge, and Rapid Fire Cannon, and then finally he gets his tier 2 boots. Unlike other AD carries who almost always go for Berserker Greaves, Lucian's actually well suited for Steel Caps or Merc Treads when you need them. He just isn't that reliant on fast attacks since he gets a lot of damage from his spells and his passive 2-hit auto anyway. He then tops his build off with a Bloodthirster to finish him off. But we do want to note that against a tankier enemy team comp, he'd likely pick up Lord Dominic's Regards in place of one of the last 2 legendary items. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's get into the game itself. Carzzy starts off the game with a fake leash. If your jungler is starting topside and you aren't going for a level 1 cheese, this is generally the best thing to do. Some players would just sit in the lane and go for a fast push, but this can have some pretty bad consequences. For one, if you have the stronger lane, shoving in the wave means that your opponents will be closer to their tower, so trading into them will actually be harder. And if you have the weaker lane, pushing towards their tower means that it's just that easier for the other bot lane to zone you from XP once they have level 2. And the other thing to think about is the enemy jungle. If you shove the wave in first, the next minion wave will also always get stuck on the enemy side of the lane near their tower, at least for a little bit. That's usually enough time for the jungler to clear their red quadrant and then come for an early gank onto you, and any pressure that you were trying to build is now gone. So remember, the first 2 or 3 levels can sometimes set the pace of the entire lane, so don't put yourself in a position where you have to play off your back foot. So early in the lane phase, he's fine to just last hit for now, barely going in for trades unless it's free. His main goal is to just let the wave push into him, since even this relatively weak enemy bot lane may be able to get a good early all-in on him if he pushes too far, since in fact he is just laning with a Yuumi. With Jarvan about to be done with blue buff, he starts to trade a bit more with the enemy bot lane to try and bait them for the incoming gank. It works like a charm, and though Yuumi's just barely gets CC'd, locking her out of reattaching, it's still very worth a 1-for-2 trade. After getting the 2 kills, rather than prepping the wave to freeze on his side, he just shoves it into the enemy tower so that they'll end up with a slow push back to him. If you're going for this route, always make sure to shove the wave all the way to the tower. Failing to do that can give the enemy bot lane a freeze, and if you can't break that freeze, it can easily cause that early lead to just crumble. So after all that, he's able to pick up a pickaxe, while Senna was only able to buy a tier. Lucian's already a stronger champ for trading, and with this item disparity, it's only going to be better for him. The wave's doing exactly what he wants to, pushing slowly back to him. So this means that he'll easily be able to go aggressively for trades on his side of the lane with little to no chance of the enemy jungler interfering. And that's exactly what happens. He starts trading somewhat lightly, but when Yuumi heals him, he dashes in to apply his vigilance-empowered autos onto Senna. Pyke reacts by going for an E, so Carzzy just backs up. Instead of just using Pyke's stun to back up, Senna comes in for more trading. Now, Carzzy knows that he's going to win this extended fight, so he commits. He knows Senna's W is about to come out, and he's also ready for it, so the second that she shoots it, he just flashes over it and secures the kill. With Senna dead and his E on cooldown, the flashless Pyke is now dead in the water. The enemy Akali and Kindred join in for the fun and are finally able to bring him down, but not before Kindred is also traded. While Akali does get the shutdown, for Carzzy, these kill trades were a huge profit, and he's now very ahead of the enemy Senna in terms of items. But the bad news is, he comes back to lane with the wave in a terrible spot. After his death, Orianna TP'd down and had an extended fight with Akali that resulted in her dying, and the wave bounced back to the enemy bot lane. Now, the right call here would be to shove in the wave and back all the way off, since his flash is down and there's no vision in the river. A good jungler would be passing straight down to gank, and with Kindred having her mark on the bottom Scuttle Crab anyway, the odds are pretty high that she's nearby. Now, Carzzy makes a mistake of trading after clearing the wave and gets hooked in. This in the 2v2 would be fine, but of course, predictably, Kindred is there to pick up the double kill. Though he's still very far ahead of Senna in terms of the 2v2 potential, feeding a carry like Kindred is a really good way to throw a game. No matter how strong you are, remember to respect the enemy jungler. But after coming back to lane, he once again has a freeze for himself. So until he knows Kindred is topside or his Jarvan is nearby, he'll just want to play as safe as possible, so he sticks to last hitting under tower for as long as he can. So about a minute after getting back to lane, the wave evens out, and with it being this close to tower, that means that his freeze is finally broken and the lane will start to slow push to the other side. He sees Kindred near mid on a ward, but since the wave will take a while to push out from this position, he knows the odds of her waiting around for him are pretty low. And as the waves meet just outside of the enemy's turret range, Kindred shows up top in a gank on Camille, so Carzzy now knows that he's totally safe. With the enemy having next to no threat against him at this point, he's able to take a free plate. But then Yuumi decides that an easy game is no fun, so to spice things up, she detaches and gives over a free kill. He tries to trade back, but his efforts are in vain, so it ends up becoming 2 free kills for the enemy bot lane. Now, at this point, the gold gap between him and Senna is a lot smaller than it should be due to the last 2 throws, but he is still a much stronger 2v2 champ. That said, Pyke adds a lot to kill threats, and if he's chain CC'd or Yuumi gets caught out again, it's still very much a losable lane. So coming back to lane after that mini disaster, his wave is in a spot where it's already going to slow push back to the enemy tower. This could potentially be very dangerous, so the best option is to just wait for the next wave and then push it all to crash at once to avoid the potential jungle ganks. Then, the enemy team actually makes a pretty huge mistake. Instead of punishing Carzzy and Yuumi for the last 2 throws, Pyke just wanders mid to try and gank. Now, in certain situations, this may be good, but now, Senna is all alone in bot lane. She just used her summoners in that last 2v2, so she should be sitting all the way back under turret, which of course she doesn't, so they immediately jump on this chance to swing the lane back in their favor. Yuumi opens up with ult, and Carzzy immediately flashes in on Senna. He knows he has the damage for this to work and easily gets the 1-for-1 trade. But you have to think about this as more than just a kill trade. It's also denying Senna a massive wave of farm that she would otherwise be safe to get, and it's also bouncing the wave back to them in the process. And yeah, of course, Yuumi could easily have gotten out, but as we've seen up to this point in the VOD, this isn't exactly a player with much of a thought process going on, so she just runs up and dies too, giving Kindred a stack for free. Now, following the bot lane deaths, the next half a minute or so is kind of a clown fiesta, with the skirmish happening between the enemy bot lane towers. And yeah, EUS kind of starting to look like NA at this point. Anyways, Carzzy shows up and goes for a bold dive at the inner tower, picking up 2 kills, with one of them being a massive 900 gold shutdown on the Akali. So with all that in his pocket, he's now happy to trade his life away and cement a massive lead for himself. Now remember, not that long ago, he had back-to-back throws bot lane that caused his gold lead to dwindle to just 400 over Senna, but now it's back up to about 1700. With a champ as snowbally as Lucian, that's a lead that you can easily run away with. Lucian's also one of the few AD carries that has some sort of agency on his own, because his ability to dash in and force fights on opponents means that he can use a lead to take over a game. Now, with all that said, being ahead doesn't mean that he can totally take on the enemy team just yet, as we're about to see. After getting back to lane, he wants to use his newly acquired lead to bully the enemy bot lane. But Yuumi isn't quite done with her griefing yet. She yet again detaches, this time into a Senna W, allowing Pyke to chain his CC onto her. Pyke's ult is still down, and Carzzy would likely be able to salvage the situation, even with Yuumi's awful gameplay, but Zilean and Kindred show up to ensure that that doesn't happen. Now, at this point, it's kind of tough as a Lucian because you can't really control your support from doing this kind of stuff, but if you're the Yuumi in the situation, just stay attached. But just as Yuumi is constantly griefing Carzzy, the enemy team is here to make up for it. Kindred and Senna are really greedy for the tower, and while they do end up getting it, Carzzy and Yuumi are able to go for a fight with their ults, picking up another double kill. And just like last time, one of those kills is another 900 gold shutdown, again giving a huge boost to his carry potential. Sometimes dying to take a tower can be somewhat worth since having a structure lead can be a bit of a macro advantage, but with those two dead and Pyke and Akali mid, he's totally safe to push and take the enemy bot lane tower for himself, neutralizing that lead as well. Once again, he's just in a prime spot to take over this game, even if his team is overall pretty behind. So with both bot lane towers dead, laning phase is over. So he goes mid lane instead, hoping to use his lead to affect the rest of the map. As long as Yuumi doesn't detach and throw herself at the enemy team again, he should be safe, even against an Akali. When he pushes to the enemy tower, he knows moving up to auto would be a bit too risky, so he instead tries to put some damage onto Akali. For every auto that he lands on her, he's chipping away, trying to push her back to base, because if he can force her to reset, then he'll be safe to target the tower. And even if she doesn't take a reset, she'll then be too low to safely participate in any fights that happen. After the wave is cleared, Carzzy backs off, Kindred ends up coming for a gank, but he's so fed that he almost immediately forces her ult, and then uses his own to pick up the kill after she hops away. After that, they push the enemy tower, and with Akali softened up like I was talking about before, they're able to force a more aggressive fight, starting out by hitting the enemies under their tower. Now, I'd say this is almost too aggressive here. If Zilean wasn't able to come down, sure, would have been a free play, but you always have to take the entire enemy team into account. Either way, the fight isn't a total loss, because he's still able to kill Akali the second that she comes out of stealth. And quick note, if you aren't already using the attack move function, this is a good reason to. Then getting hit with the double bomb, which hate to throw him under the bus, but kinda Yuumi's fault again, he ends up being killed. Again, if Yuumi just never detached, she wouldn't have been rooted by Everfrost and wouldn't be a free double bomb stun target. Carzzy also could have reacted a bit better here because he could have flashed out of the double bomb, and if he had, there's a good chance that he would have either been able to force Zilean to ult the Senna or made an escape by running down into the red jungle. But this next part is a good example of why playing with your support as an AD carry matters. No matter how bad this Yuumi's played up to this point and how fed Carzzy is, her heals, movement, and vigilant procs are crucial to him carrying the game. But he decides to fight without her and is pretty much insta-killed. It does end up being a 2-for-3 trade, which may be kind of worth for his team, but when you're playing in lower elos, you shouldn't ever rely on your team to carry you. You always need to go for the plays where you are least likely to die. The only one responsible for your LP, after all, is you. But regardless of that, at this point, Carzzy is huge, with 3 completed items in just 18 minutes. So after his team takes Infernal, Akali forces a fight, taking down Orianna. Now, that should be the end of things, but to no one's surprise, Yuumi detaches again, just in time to be stunned and killed. Jarvan can easily get out of here with EQ and Blast Cone, but Carzzy really wants him to turn and fight, so when J4 doesn't, he takes it upon himself to dash in and die. Now, the right play here is pretty obvious. When the fight's already happening and it's a loss, don't go back in and make things worse. Dragon's already off the map, so there's really nothing to fight for anyway. The best thing to do is just shove out mid-wave so the enemy team cannot siege after taking those picks. And following that, the best thing to do at this point macro-wise is to knock down mid lane tower. That will open up the map, especially since the enemy team got his right off the last fight. Yuumi attaches to Jarvan, making it less safe for Carzzy to go mid and do that, so instead he stays away from mid, waiting for the enemy team to get done clearing the wave so that he can do the same. Then once again his team starts pushing the bot inner tower, and he knows the enemy has the answer, so he's clear to push mid and knock down this turret. Then after a bit of a lull in the action, he's mid clearing a wave when a scrappy fight breaks out near Raptors. If it was any champ other than Kindred, this would be an easy wipe, but with her ultimate, she's able to stall things out, get him low, and with the Zilean stun, take him down as his ult mows down Zilean. Thankfully, Jarvan reaches the fight and is able to clean things up though. When your team gets caught out like this and you're fed, it's really easy for you to just want to dash in and turn things around, but you have to be mindful of what cooldowns the enemy team may have. Even if you're 6 items at 30 minutes as an AD carry, if the enemy team has a big ult like Kindred or sometimes like an Annie or Malphite, you have to make sure that you play around those cooldowns to actually use your strength. Now, with his team being down, Baron, and no more Kindred ult to stall out fights, Carzzy knows that he can go as hard as he wants in the next fight. When Kindred moves into range, he just dashes right onto her face and deletes her. After that, there's a little scuffle with Zilean and Pyke, but with Yuumi yet again not attached when she should be, they barely get away. After that, he takes a jungle camp and then goes mid to catch this wave. Now, this is just one of the seemingly unimportant details that you don't want to miss out on. A lot of AD carries may just run to Dragon by default, but it should already be free for his team either way. So running to grab the wave before doing Dragon is a really important part of keeping up your farm throughout the game, as well as giving your team good wave position for pushing, especially when you have the Baron buff. Now, what happens in this next bit isn't entirely Carzzy's fault, but again, in solo queue, you have to account for your teammates being not exactly the smartest from time to time. The best macro decision at this point is just pretty simple. Use Baron to push in mid and take the inner tower and inhib if possible. But Camille ends up being ganked in the bottom jungle. Now, this shouldn't change anything, mid is still to play, but Jarvan goes in thinking it's a 2v2 because two opponents are showing bot lane. Then Senna's there as well, and Camille is quickly taken down. Carzzy also reacts, going down river to try and make this into some type of winnable situation, and now a surprising plot twist happens. For absolutely no reason at all whatsoever, Yuumi detaches on the way down and can't catch back up to Carzzy to reattach. He's too focused on the fight to even realize it, and while he does kill Senna, he's powerless to do anything since Zilean has his ult. It's still really close, and he brings Akali within one auto attack of death, so had Yuumi just stayed attached, he would absolutely have been able to ace them there. But this brings us back to that original point. If he had just played it himself mid, Yuumi couldn't mess anything up, and they would have been able to get the inner tower and possibly even the inhib tower. So now that the whole team is back on the map and the target is the enemy bot lane tower, after pushing into the red jungle and establishing vision control, they want to siege the inner turret. But Akali TP is behind them, which is reacted with an Ori TP as well. And awkward dancing ensues, with neither team really committing too much until Jarvan flash ults to engage the fight. Carzzy has finally learned how to play around Kindred ult now, so instead of just dashing into melee range and trying to blow her up, Carzzy instead uses his own ult to force hers, and then backs off waiting for the timer. Then once the zone is clear, he's able to dash in for an easy kill. After that, he moves up to take out Akali, and with the two biggest threats of the enemy team gone, he's now able to do pretty much whatever he wants without much fear of repercussions. He goes on to take bottom and mid inner turrets, but then chooses to fight the remaining three enemies mid, trading himself 1-for-1. Okay, maybe he should have been a little bit fearful of repercussions. So with this team being at sole point, the enemy wants to contest the dragon, but their comp sorta leaves them unable to force a fight. Their indecisiveness and lack of proactivity ends up leading to their doom. They stick around in the area way too long, and Carzzy is able to force a fight, using his E and Gale Force active to engage on Akali. If Akali dies here, it's basically over anyway, so her team is forced to turn and try to fight. He's able to gun down Kindred, then chases Akali to mid and brings her down as well. But he's not done yet, because he dashes and flashes into the enemy base to ensure that no one survives the onslaught. With that, he's able to close out the game, and yeah, it was pretty sloppy, but still an impressive performance, especially when you consider how many times his support did things that just absolutely messed up the game. But anyway, that's another fun wrap-up of Carzzy's solo queue gameplay. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to sub and let us know what other pro you want us to do these for next. We're always looking for community feedback. Also, one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below, where you can chat, talk League further, or just hang out and be part of the community. Anyway, that's it for today, so best of luck on the Rift, everybody. Stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one.